Have you ever walked into a quiet room after hours of noise, and suddenly felt like you could breathe again? What if your mind could feel like that room? Today, I want to talk about something we've been conditioned to ignore: silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. The kind that transforms not just moments, but entire lives. We've been taught to trust our minds, to think critically, analyze, assess, decide. And while thinking is a powerful tool, somewhere along the way, we began to believe that our thoughts define us, that what runs through our mind must be a reflection of who we are. But let's stop for a moment and challenge that. If thoughts define us, then what about the ones that come uninvited, the dark ones? The fearful ones, the ones we wish we could erase the moment they appear. Do those thoughts define us too? The truth is, thoughts are not facts, they are not commands, they are not truths etched in stone. They are just mental activity. Like clouds drifting across the sky, they appear and disappear, shaped by the weather of your mood, your past, your biology. And just like clouds, they don't need your permission to show up. They form, they float, but they do not own the sky. We've all experienced it, sitting in silence, and suddenly an intrusive thought appears. Maybe it's self-doubt, maybe it's an old memory, maybe it's a future fear. It sneaks in, uninvited, and without realizing it, we give it power. We engage, we entertain, we wrestle with it. And in doing so, we start to believe that the thought itself is us, but it's not, it never was. Think about this. If you can observe a thought, then who is doing the observing? There's a deeper part of you, the witness, the awareness, that notices the thought without becoming it. That alone proves something important. If you can observe your thoughts, you cannot be your thoughts. You are the one who watches them come and go, and yet we judge ourselves for the thoughts we have. We assume that a harsh thought means we're cruel, that a sad thought means we're broken, that an anxious thought means we're weak. But thoughts aren't moral, they aren't noble or shameful, they are just mental traffic, and just because a car passes you on the road doesn't mean you chose to drive it. Our conditioning, our culture, even our education system, has wired us to believe in absolute ownership over everything we experience mentally. If you feel fear, you must be afraid. If you feel doubt, you must be unsure. But what if those were just temporary states passing through a permanent identity? What if who you truly are is not the thought, but the calm that exists behind it? We rarely question our thoughts because they sound like us. They wear our voice, they mimic our patterns, but just because a voice sounds familiar doesn't mean it's true. The mind repeats, it echoes. It recycles old fears and predictions, and often, the thoughts we experience today were born out of yesterday's wounds. They don't speak truth, they speak history. We are not responsible for the first thought that appears, that's important. We don't always control the initial spark, the fear, the judgment, the insecurity. But we are responsible for what happens next. Do we hold on to it? Do we feed it? Or do we simply let it pass, knowing it's just one wave in a vast ocean? When we over-identify with our thoughts, we suffer needlessly. We live in defense, in shame, in fear of our own inner world. But when we begin to separate ourselves from our thoughts, we access freedom. The freedom to choose what we believe. The freedom to respond instead of react. The freedom to listen, but not obey every mental impulse that surfaces. The practice, then, is not to silence the mind completely, but to stop treating every thought as truth, to see them for what they are, suggestions, not orders. Background noise, not identity. The mind can be noisy. The soul, on the other hand, is quiet, and it knows exactly who you are, with or without the thoughts. We often confuse silence with weakness, with retreat, with the absence of something meaningful, but that's only because we've grown up in a world that equates presence with noise. If someone speaks, we assume they have power. If someone reacts quickly, we think they are in control. If someone stays silent, we wonder if they're unsure, indifferent, or worse, insignificant. But true silence, the kind that comes from within, isn't empty. It's full of self-restraint, full of awareness, full of purpose. There's a kind of strength that doesn't seek to prove itself. It doesn't need applause, recognition, or validation. It's the kind of strength that can walk away from chaos without losing composure, that doesn't react to every insult, every challenge, every noise that demands attention, because it knows that not everything deserves a response, and in that restraint lies a different kind of power, the power of choice. We live in a culture of immediacy. Speak now, react fast, post first, think later. But silence defies that. Silence waits, silence listens, silence observes longer than most people are comfortable with, and in that space, something incredible happens, clarity emerges. Because when you're not rushing to respond, you're actually able to see what's really going on, both around you and inside you. Most people speak to be heard, but few speak to understand. Fewer still pause before they speak. Silence gives us that pause. It slows the pace, interrupts the automatic, and forces reflection. It's not a lack of response. It's the most intentional kind of response, the kind that sees 10 steps ahead instead of reacting to the first provocation. It takes nothing to raise your voice. It takes everything to keep it steady. When someone is calm in the face of noise, they're not detached, they're anchored. They've trained their mind to remain grounded even when the world around them is shaking. That's not weakness, that's not absence, that's presence at its strongest. Think about the leaders we admire most. Not the loudest ones, not the ones who filled rooms with sound, but the ones whose silence changed the room. The ones who could walk in, say nothing, and yet shift the entire energy. Why? Because their silence wasn't empty. It was backed by substance. It came from depth, not doubt. We've been taught that silence needs to be filled with words, explanations, justification. But silence isn't a gap, it's a space. And sometimes it's in that space where the most powerful realizations emerge. Because when there is no noise to distract you, you're left only with the truth. And facing truth, that takes real courage. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you don't waste words. It means you've learned that timing matters more than volume, that wisdom speaks softly and only when necessary, that presence is not proven by how often you speak, but by what changes when you do. When someone wrongs us, our first instinct is to speak, to defend, to push back. But silence has the power to protect your dignity in ways that argument never can. Silence doesn't mean you didn't feel something. It means you chose to feel it without letting it control you. It means you trusted yourself enough to not need the last word. There is a form of silence that is passive, but there is another form that is powerful. The kind that listens with full attention, the kind that watches with intention, the kind that stands still while others run in circles. That silence is not the absence of strength. It is the demonstration of it. We often think that clarity comes from gathering more information, from reading more, asking more, doing more. But the truth is, clarity doesn't always come from the outside. It comes when the inside becomes quiet. When the internal noise of worry, self-judgment, fear, overthinking finally settles. Until that happens, we don't see things as they are. We see them as our noise filters them. Inner noise is subtle. It doesn't always sound like chaos. Sometimes it sounds like perfectionism, like the need to control, like endless comparison. It can wear the voice of ambition or the mask of caution. It doesn't shout, but it pressures. And under that pressure, we stop thinking clearly. We start reacting instead of responding, running instead of reflecting. We underestimate how loud the inside can get. A conversation from yesterday, a fear about tomorrow, a regret from years ago. It all plays like background music, even when we're not paying attention. And the more we pretend not to hear it, the louder it becomes. Not because it wants to ruin us, but because it wants to be acknowledged and then released. Imagine trying to listen to a whisper in the middle of a storm. That's what clarity feels like when the mind is noisy. The answer might already be there. The insight, the idea, the instinct, it could be sitting right at the surface, but you can't hear it because everything else is shouting over it. We confuse the loudest voice for the truest one. But often the truth doesn't yell, it waits, Inner noise creates urgency where there's none. It convinces us that we must act now, decide now, fix everything now, but clarity is not rushed. It doesn't live in panic. It lives in presence, and presence cannot exist when your mind is racing 10 steps ahead or stuck 20 steps behind. That's the cost of inner noise. It robs you of the only place where clarity lives, the now. So many of our worst decisions are not made from ignorance, but from noise. We knew what was right, we felt what was wrong, but we were too clouded by doubt, fear, pride, or pressure to follow through. That's what noise does. It doesn't change the truth. It just makes it harder to hear. It's like static on a radio. The station is still playing. You're just not tuned in. Clarity is gentle. It's quiet. It doesn't compete for attention, and that's why inner noise is so dangerous. It drowns out the voice that's trying to guide you without force. You end up listening to the wrong voices, the loud ones, the anxious ones, the voices that don't want peace. They want control, and control, when driven by fear, never leads to wisdom. People often say, "I don't know what to do." But more often, the real feeling is, "I can't hear what I already know." The knowing is there. It's just buried under noise, mental clutter, emotional residue, unprocessed thoughts. And instead of clearing the space, we try to add more information, more opinions, more distractions, thinking that will help. But you can't solve noise with more noise. Silence doesn't create clarity, it reveals it. The clarity was already there, quietly waiting for the noise to fade. When we sit still long enough, when we slow down the thinking, when we stop feeding the chaos with our attention, what's real begins to rise to the surface, not forced, not fabricated, just revealed. Like mud, settling in water until the bottom becomes visible again. The work, then, is not to chase clarity like it's somewhere outside of us. It's to clear the inner space where clarity already lives. To pause before reacting, to breathe before deciding, to notice what voices are speaking inside, and which ones are just echoes of past pain or borrowed fear. Because once the noise quiets, what's true has a way of making itself known. Stillness is often misunderstood. In a world that celebrates speed, urgency, and productivity, stillness is treated like a luxury, or worse, a weakness. But it is in stillness that we reconnect with the most ancient part of ourselves, the part that isn't chasing, performing, or pleasing, but simply being. And it's from that place of being that wisdom begins to rise, gently, without force. Wisdom doesn't arrive in a storm, it arrives like morning light, quiet, slow, and steady. It needs space to land, it needs silence to be heard, it needs patience to take root, and none of those things can exist when we're moving too fast, talking too much, or thinking too loudly. Stillness isn't a lack of activity. It's the intentional slowing down of our internal world. Think about how murky water becomes clear. You don't stir it, you let it settle. That's what stillness does to the mind. When we stop stirring every thought, every emotion, every fear, something beautiful happens. Things begin to settle. And when they do, what was always there but buried starts to reveal itself. Clarity, insight, wisdom. We don't often give ourselves the gift of uninterrupted quiet. Even when we're alone, we fill the space with noise, music, notifications, distractions. But stillness invites us to do something most people avoid, to sit with ourselves. No filters, no performance, just presence, and that presence becomes a mirror, showing us what we need to see, not just what we want to see. Wisdom doesn't come from knowing more, it comes from seeing deeper, from seeing beneath the surface, beneath the habit, beneath the emotion. Stillness creates the space to observe, to question, to understand, not reactively, but reflectively. Because when we're still, we stop running from our thoughts and start recognizing which ones are true, and which ones are just noise. In stillness, time stretches. 1 minute can feel like 10, and in that expanded time, awareness grows. We start to notice patterns we couldn't see before. We start to hear what we've been too busy to listen to: our body's signals, our intuition's whispers, the lessons hidden in our discomfort. And through that noticing, wisdom slowly gathers. We often confuse being busy with being productive, and being productive with being wise, but you can be efficient and still unwise. You can accomplish many things and still miss the one thing that matters. Wisdom isn't about how fast you move, but how intentionally you move. And intention is born in the still, quiet moments when the noise dies down and the truth gets louder. Some of the most important decisions we ever make will come from stillness, not brainstorming, not debating, not planning, but sitting in the quiet and waiting for the deeper knowing to surface. Not the clever answer. The true one, the one that doesn't just sound good, it feels right. That kind of knowing doesn't need validation. It's self-evident, and it often arrives when we're not looking for it. Stillness is not the absence of thought, it's the awareness of it. It doesn't shut down the mind, it creates distance from it. That distance gives us the power to observe without reacting, to choose our response instead of being owned by impulse. And in that space between thought and action, wisdom lives. It's subtle, but it's strong. It's quiet, but it speaks volumes. We spend our lives reaching outward, searching for answers in books, people, systems, opinions. But what if the answers aren't always out there? What if they're inside us, waiting for the noise to stop and the water to clear? What if wisdom isn't something we acquire, but something we remember? In the stillness we've been avoiding, we often speak about peace like it's a destination. Like one day we'll arrive somewhere and it will be waiting for us, untouched, undisturbed, ready to be claimed. But peace isn't a place, it's not hidden somewhere in the world, waiting to be discovered. It doesn't live in a city, a relationship, a job, or a bank account. Peace is not found, it is built, grown, chosen again and again. Peace is a process. It's made in small, invisible moments. It's crafted in the pause before the reaction, in the breath taken instead of the word shouted, in the decision to walk away from drama, even when the ego wants to stay. It's not one big decision. It's 1,000 small ones. And most of them will go unnoticed by the world, but not by you. To build peace, we first have to unlearn the idea that it's something external. We think if everything out there settles down, we'll finally feel peace in here. But the world doesn't owe us peace. It never promised stillness. If anything, the world is a moving storm, unpredictable, loud, demanding. So if we want peace, it has to start where the world can't reach, within. Building peace means choosing what to carry and what to put down. Resentment feels justified, worry feels productive, anger feels powerful, but none of them bring peace. They feed the fire and then convince you to stay warm in it. Building peace means dropping what's heavy, even when holding it feels familiar. It's learning that peace isn't passive, it's active, it's a daily kind of discipline. Sometimes we wait for peace like we wait for weather to change. We say, when this is over, I'll feel better. Once this happens, I'll be okay. But peace isn't postponed. It's not sitting in the future. It starts now, in the middle of the mess, in the middle of uncertainty, in the middle of all the things that didn't go according to plan. If peace only exists in perfect conditions, then it's not peace. It's just convenience. Building peace means setting boundaries, not as a rejection of others, but as a commitment to yourself. It means protecting your mental space, your emotional energy, your time. Not out of fear, but out of love. Peace isn't built by saying yes to everything. It's built by having the courage to say no when something costs your calm. Peace is also built in how we speak to ourselves. You can't build peace with a violent inner voice. You can't create calm when your mind is a battlefield of criticism and judgment. Building peace means changing the tone, learning to speak to yourself like someone you love. Gently, honestly, with grace, because your mind is your home, and peace begins with how you treat yourself inside it. We often think building peace means everything must slow down, but sometimes life doesn't allow that. The deadlines stay, the people don't change, the world keeps spinning, so the work is to build peace while things move, to build it not in isolation, but in the middle of real life, to create moments of quiet between the noise. To anchor yourself so deeply, the wind can blow and you don't break. Peace isn't built with one grand gesture. It's built in how you wake up, how you eat, how you walk, how you forgive, how you let go. It's built in the rituals no one sees, the choices no one claps for, the inner shifts that don't make headlines. Peace is built like a muscle, slowly, intentionally, patiently, and like any muscle, it grows through use, not theory. The illusion is that peace is waiting for us, somewhere down the line, in a better version of our lives. But the truth is, it's built right here in the tension, in the silence, in the decision to return to your center when everything else pulls you away. Not once, every day, we spend much of our lives looking outward, searching for answers, chasing peace, trying to fix the chaos around us. But the truth we often forget is that the real work begins within. Because we are not our thoughts, we are the space that watches them, and in that awareness we reclaim our power, not by reacting louder, but by listening deeper. Silence, stillness, and inner clarity aren't signs of passivity. They are signs of mastery. They require strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. They ask us to pause when it would be easier to rush, to observe when it would be easier to judge, to respond when it would be easier to explode. And in those small, unseen decisions, we begin to carve a different path. When we stop feeding the noise, clarity rises. When we stop fearing stillness, wisdom speaks. And when we stop searching for peace like it's a treasure buried somewhere else, we realize it was never lost. It was just waiting to be built, layer by layer, choice by choice, breath by breath. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It grows in the quiet behind the curtain of our daily lives. It grows when we treat our thoughts with kindness, our emotions with understanding, and our minds with care. The journey is inward, not far, and the moment we choose to sit with ourselves, not to change, but to listen, is the moment we begin.